All right, we are live. Hello, everyone. Sorry for the delay. I realized I had PM instead of AM, so I had to tweak that and make sure it was updated in all the places. But yeah, so we finished up yesterday, and hey, my thanks to Laravel has gotten merged. So it seemed like I didn't annoy Taylor too much with multiple PRs that came through. So let's review these real quick while hopefully people are catching up on the stream, and then we'll go from there. So let's see here. Okay, so the shorthands, I think this is where we finished up yesterday. I drove out some tests, but I didn't actually end up finishing out the implementation. It was pretty straightforward code. We'll look at the diff real fast, but basically here's before. As we saw, you basically have to wrap all of your fake responses in an HTTP response. There's this nice little helper method, but it would be super cool if you could just, again, pass in a string or a status code as an integer, or even your array as JSON. Now, actually, in the process of finishing out the tests and running the test suite, technically sending an array in was actually supported, although it wasn't documented. You could do this as Guzzle allowed it underneath. So even though the type hints, or not type hints, the doc block type hints, and the code would not have led you to believe that. There was one test case that when I added this, especially, it ended up failing because it kind of just worked on its own and I didn't need to call it out. So to that point, let's look at the code that actually changed. If we look at the factory, again, pretty straightforward. If it's an integer and it's a valid HTTP status code range, meaning 100 to 500 level, then we just set that status and build that response object for you. If it's an integer or a string at this point, meaning you're just returning like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 99999, or whatever you're returning, then we just cast that as a string and make it be the body. And then finally, just a little code cleanup here. There was that old ternary, but now that we kind of have these if guard clauses, I just broke this out into its own. So you can see here before, single ternary to handle the callback. Now we just broke this out to drive out our shorthands and properly build those responses. I did verify that fake and stub are single usages, so they're the single entry point, both of which call stub URL. So putting this here should, all the tests were passing, but it should encapsulate everywhere this needs to change. So again, this is merged. It's going to be available when the next Laravel 11 release is tagged, which is normally on Tuesdays. So hopefully later today, this will be in there. So it seems like people liked it. Thanks for joining. Thanks Laravel, right? Final one was this bus assert empty. I ended up calling this assert nothing placed. There was a little discussion about making it assert nothing added or assert nothing queued or these kind of things. In looking at the documentation, they used the word placed on the bus several times in the documentation for queues. So that's why I kind of just went with assert nothing placed. Assert nothing added was a very close second. And we saw this is just a wrapper for, again, calling those two things together. So anyway, you get the idea. So far, 2 PRs to say thanks to Laravel, both merged and ready to go. So they'll be in the next release. So today, I've got some other things I want to PR. Today is kind of more of the paper cut things. And then tomorrow I want to try to do a new feature. It might even need to be targeted at Laravel 12. We'll see what it looks like. So to that point, let's get back out of release.new and back into the framework. Let's check out 11.x. Let's make sure we get pull upstream, get the latest code here. Good stuff. And then let's do a get checkout -b. I'm going to call this global events. Okay, I made a tweet about this a few weeks ago, and I think I also put it in my Shifty Bits newsletter. Let me see. It's not very clear in the documentation, but let me see if I can kind of demonstrate the paper cut here. If we, I think there's like a named, I think they call it like named events, named. Yeah, okay, it's not really here. You may also register, okay, so the documentation was a bit light on this, which is why I made a post on Twitter. I'm not going to go dig up the post on Twitter, but basically the point is if you use a generic event name, I'm not sure, again, if they call it generic or, again, I've tried to search for a name, but it's on here too many times. The point is that you can fire off arbitrarily in your Laravel application an event. So you can say, just event dot, order dot shipped, right? This is normally what you do. If you end up listening for it, I think it might be in broadcasting actually. If you end up listening for that named event, you have to register it globally. Yes, let's see if I can find this. Here it is. Yeah, if you customize the broadcast name using broadcast at method, you must register your listener with a leading dot character. This will instruct Echo not to prepend the application's namespace to the event. Again, part of me feels like, I guess in this case, Echo could be a bit smarter about that. So this was kind of a gotcha. Again, I posted and multiple people, Aaron Francis, some other people were like, yeah, I've been bit by that before. Well, let's not get bit by it, right? I think this could be a bit smoother. Like, I appreciate that this is documented, but again, it's a very kind of small note in the broadcast name. You may be broadcasting an event in different ways. So again, listening for that. Again, this code seems to be an Echo, but I think Echo could probably be a bit smarter here, where you didn't have to prefix it, right? So for example, even the example here, there's no way a class name in PHP can have a dot or a dash or these types of things, right? And that's typically how you're naming your generic events. You're normally saying something like server.created or order.shipped or, subscription.renewed. A lot of the documentation demonstrates firing events in that format. Or maybe you're using dashes, server-created. So in those cases, Echo could, again, just to help you out, I think Echo could just not prefix it in those cases. If your event name that you're listening for contains a dot or contains a dash, these are not valid things in a class name in PHP. And therefore, I think you could make the safe assumption that this is a globally named event, right? This is a separate event name than a class. So I've never worked in the Laravel, this is going to be an Echo, it looks like. So I've never worked in that domain before. So let's go check it out, right? This will be a new, the whole point is saying thanks to Laravel. Echo's part of the Laravel community. So let's go look for Laravel Echo. Here it is. Oh, Laravel Echo. So let's copy this down and see if we can find where it is. We'll spend 10 minutes on this. If I can't find it, then we'll move on to the next little paper cut. I thought this was in Laravel, but it's saying that it's an Echo. So let's do git clone that. Probably need to clone my fork, but again, we're just hacking around right now, so I can clean that up later. Let's cd into Echo, and we're going to need to gwd that, and let's open PHP Storm. All right, well, that's opening. Let's go back to the docs. Oh, I think I killed the docs. Or no, we jumped here. Let's look for that dot character again. So it looks like the listen command. Let's just see if we can find this listen JavaScript bit and see, how it's kind of prefixing this name. Is this done, in Laravel? Is it done somewhere else? Where is it done? Or sorry, in PHP, not in Laravel. Let's paste Laravel Echo, drop in Echo. I don't want to get too deep into JavaScript land, but again, it should be a pretty easy check and or regex. So let's just search for listen and see what pops up. So Simon. Hey Simon, what's going on? Gotta update PHP Storm, man. Whoops, don't kill my stream. I almost hit Command K. What's wrong? Thought I was on the latest. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm a version or two behind. Anyway, let's do a search for listen and see what we find. Okay, there's nothing called listen in PHP. Is there something in JavaScript? Yes, there is. Oh my gosh, it's TypeScript. Oh no. Oh, okay, okay. We're gonna do our best here. This event formatter, format event. Okay, listen, here we go. This looks promising. Push your channels. Oh, there's multiple channels too. Uh-oh. Okay. So this on event formatter format. Okay, they all use the event formatter. Null channel, fine. Socket.io. So there's multiple drivers in Echo that you're going to listen for. So we're going to have to make sure that this gets fixed in kind of all the places. And they got some tests here. That's nice. All right, let's see what this event formatter does. So it's multiple places that it's going to have to be updated. Not everyone uses this event formatter though. So let's go take a look at this event formatter. Brings in an event formatter. Construct format. Okay. This dot namespace. Here we go. Okay, so this is where it would go. Yes. Okay. So if it starts with a dot or a slash, then it's globally named. Just trust the event name. Otherwise, we would set the event and then we're going to replace any dots. Oh, that's interesting. See, I don't even know if that's documented. They're going to replace any dots with a slash. This may be quite breaking, actually. Let's look at the docs. I think I don't think this is shown in the docs, but instead of using slashes, they assume that if you use dots, that you're specifying the path. That's what they're saying here. You'd have to look through all the code samples here to find what I'm talking about. Again, such deep knowledge. That's pretty buried in there. Listening for events. So yeah, or see, that's not a good example. So this would get prefixed, right? By default, all of the, okay, so this will get prefixed. Again, it doesn't really talk about the prefix, but it gets prefixed with the event namespace. But what they're also saying, in this scenario, if you didn't put the dot in front of it, that's going to end up looking for app/event/server/created. It's gonna end up looking for that. That's what it's going to look for, based on what's happening here, where it searches for the dot and replaces it with a slash. I'm sure if we looked in the test cases, we would demonstrate that. So because of that, this is kind of a heavy breaking change. I don't know if this one's gonna fly. If it didn't do this, I would submit this. But given that it does that, it kind of makes me a bit nervous to do this. You'd kind of have to go so far as to say, like, is this a lowercase string name, and does this class exist already, and all that kind of stuff. I don't know how many people are practically using that. But yeah, I didn't do a poll. You'd never be able to do an accurate poll anyway. So as annoying as this one was when it happened to me, like, I learned, and it'll probably never happen again. So I think because of this line, gonna have to let this one go. Crap. Yeah. I'm curious, do they, just to finish this out, yeah, they have an event formatter test. Okay, let's see here. So if they put the dot there, then they know it's global. If they put that there, they put the dot there, they put that there. Yeah, see, here's their example. Does not prepend a namespace when none is set. This isn't the most accurate test name, but basically it's also demonstrating that it's changing users/user created to users/user created. There probably should be another test here, in my opinion, that does something along the lines of, like, it converts dot notation to class path, right? Like that's, I don't know how to run these, but I assume if they set the namespace up here somewhere, it doesn't look like they set the namespace. You can set the namespace. I think it had like a event formatter dot set namespace. Yeah, so we could say something like app events / that. And then what we would expect in this case would be app / events / use. So this path really should be here to kind of really drive that home, because again, it's not in the documentation, and again, without kind of like that array notation, like without looking deep in the tests, you would have never known it did this. So yeah, this is kind of proof that there's opportunity to have a little more education around these event names. Technically, the dot notation or the dot prefix is in the documentation. It seems like a lot of people kind of maybe didn't read that far and got burned by this before, but I guess you only get burned once, and I don't want to make such a big breaking change. So we're going to back off this. We're going to let that one go. We're going to let that one go. Leave it to someone willing to do the breaking change. So let's go back. Let's go back to our command line. Let's go back to the framework and move on to the next papercut idea. So it's not in the framework. So let's do a branch -m. I think, is it -m or -in? I think it's -m for rename. Let's call this without envs. Okay, cool. I have no idea why that's -m. I feel like it should be like -r or -in or something. But whatever. That's rename a branch. -m, capital M. Okay, let's look at the process. I don't know how hard this is going to be, but I don't like this, and I want to fix this. Fix isn't the right word. I want to add a feature here. When you run a process, I don't think people know this. This is another got you. I do a lot of processes, underlying processes inside of my Laravel application. So for example, shift, you buy a shift, I put the job on the queue. The job itself runs processes underneath to run your shift. It has a handful of processes that it runs through a pipeline. And that's what runs your shift. The shift itself, the engine of shift, the stuff that's doing the changes, isn't necessarily written in Laravel. It's not even all written in PHP. In fact, it's a lot of different languages. It's sub processes. It's Unix commands. You know, there's even like a tiny little Go file IO thing in there. So I use the process facade a lot. I love the process facade. Something people may not know about the process facade, and again, not necessarily documented unless you understand the underlying process, the Symfony process that's being used, is that all of your env variables that you have in your Laravel application when you run a process are passed down to the sub-process. So you better hope that that sub-process you're running doesn't do anything at all malicious, because it has your app key, it has your database connection information, it has everything inside of it unless you turn it off, because it's a child process of the running process that Laravel's using. So it, by nature, it just gets that stuff. That's how processes and child process work on a system. So what I would really like to see is, instead of unsetting all of the stuff inside of Laravel and having to remember, oh, version upgrades, you know, DB connection is now DB driver, vice versa, right? Like cache driver is now cache store. If you forget any of that when you upgrade, now of course Shift can help you with that, but if you forget any of that when you upgrade, that stuff's going to that sub-process. So again, you likely own the sub-process, so it's not a huge deal, but it would be nice if there was an option to turn that stuff off. So to my knowledge, that option does not exist. So let's do this. Let's find, not process result, let's find the process itself. And then process test, is this good? Yeah, okay, so here's our fake factory, blah, 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 blah. Somewhere in here, I think they have like forever. maybe this isn't the only test that we do. Let's get into factory. Do they have like forever? They do have a command called for wherever, but I wonder where that actually gets used. We got result, describe, sequence, fake, is recording, prevent stray process. Oh, this makes a pending process, doesn't it? Does it make a pending process? This is a new pattern Laravel uses a lot. It's kind of like this pending. No, that's not it. Where does this actually get used? Maybe it's at the facade level. Factory, yeah, here's a pending process. I just saw it. Where was it? Pending process. Please stop. There it is. Oh my God, PHP Storm. Give me a break. Pending process. Here we go. I think in here is forever. Yes, there we go. Forever. Timeout. No. Here's env. Set additional env variables for the process. Okay, set additional ones, including all the ones that your app give you. What would be really cool, and again, I don't know how hard this is, but I would really love to see, this is what I'd love to see, is, without env, right? So I'd like to be able to say, like, without env, and what this does is it builds up the environment variables that are already existent in the Laravel application and removes those from the process, from the sub-process. In order to remove them, again, this is a Symfony thing, but you basically say like app key is false, right? So you basically have to iterate through all of the environment variable names, and then set them, their value to false in this array. So again, this gets passed down to Symfony and therefore gets turned off. I would love if Symfony had this option, but to my knowledge, I looked at it last time I ran into this problem, they do not. They do not have the disabling of this. So I don't know the best approach here. I don't know like if Laravel has like an env. I think they have an env helper. I don't know, again, there's no way to kind of list all of them, I don't think. Of course, you do have like get env available, but that kind of gets everything. That gets the system stuff too to turn off. So it'd be nice if we could limit this to Laravel just itself, and that's why this is kind of hard, and that's why this probably doesn't already exist. So it'd be nice if, I don't know, that's what we're going to hack on. I don't know if there's a way, if someone knows in the chat, let me know. But yeah, basically, I think if we can find a way to just get Laravel's envs, then that would be pretty nice. Maybe this is a running list that Laravel just keeps track of. I don't know how good that is. Again, it'd be nice to know yours, right? Like, for example, I have like GitHub tokens, right, that are part of Shift. Maybe I don't want those to be passed down to the sub process. So like, it'd be nice if it read your .env and then kind of merge that with Laravel's. So Laravel clearly has access to all of this stuff. So let's just, again, let's stop chatting about it and see if we can actually find it. This isn't the right approach, but let's get this Git repository and see what this gives us. This gives us a .env repository interface. It has git, set, and clear. Of course, it doesn't have all. That would be so cool if it did, but it doesn't. So has reader read. So it gets constructed with a reader. It gets a name, reader reads, get or else, and clear. Get writer delete name. What's this reader have? Just read. Well, that's handy. Calling out to a friend here. Let's see. What does get env give us? Let's dump. I think get env gives you an array. Yeah, array or false. Let's dump array keys of get env. And let's just turn this off for now. Again, I'm just trying to determine how practical, let's just DD that, How practical is this? And then who calls, let's see who calls forever. There's no pending process test. There's got to be pending process test. Really? No. It's in here somewhere. It's just one of those integration tests. Pending process, pipe, pending process. It's not in here. Let's go check the actual test. Let's find where this is. Let's look for in here, pending process. PHP Storm, what is wrong with you? Nothing? Come on, that's not right. There's no pending process in tests? What does this test do? This makes a new factory, it calls fake, it checks the result. It calls run. Factory fake result, path run. What does path return? Why is this not auto-completing? Doesn't one of these return a pending process? Fake process result. Process result. Who returns the process? Who returns a pending process? Prevent stray, assert ran, pending process. Pending process, who gives it back? Record, new pending process, public function. Okay. Is it only the facade? It's interesting to me that, like, somewhere in here they have to test for forever, right? I mean, don't they test any of that stuff? That's the source directory. Let's go down to the test directory. Forever. Store forever. Okay, that's caching. This might be a bit much. Redis cache, Redis store. They don't. That's surprising to me. Nothing tests this. Okay, what's another way I can mess with this? All right, let's go back to process, the fake. Underneath, yeah, command returns pending process, forever, all this. Okay, so all of these high-level things just supposedly return a pending process. So the factory just passes those down, I think. That's why this is. So it's not documented here, but I think if I open up, so in the absence of a test, if I open up Tinker and I call process : without env, we should get the dump because I wrote the method and we're DDing. So PHP, or is Artisan even in the framework? No, it's not. Crap. Do I have? I don't think I have Tinker well on my iMac. I'm never on the iMac other than the stream, really. Crap. What else can we do? I don't think, is Tinker part of this? No, Tinker's its own package. Well, that's not going to help either. Poop. Okay, we'll do it old school then. We'll do test.php. We'll go to test.php. We're going to do vendor require vendor autoload, and we're going to do process without env, and we're going to import you as that. Let's see if this works. It's our own little version of Tinker. I don't think this is going to work, but we're going to try it. Fatal error, facade root is not been set. Yeah, because you have to. Yeah, yeah. You can. I don't think you can use facades because technically the container would have to boot. That's why in all the tests you use the underlying. They create a new version of the underlying factory in this case. Okay. So we need to create this, which would forward. I think which would forward calls onto the underlying. I think is the way it would work. Yeah, it returns a new factory class. So basically what we do is, just like in the test, we're going to make a new factory. Theoretically, this should work. Let's get rid of that. And then here, this should forward calls on because it's macroable, I think. Again, that's the part I'm not sure about. But I think we might be able to do that. Yeah, okay, cool. Okay, so here you go. Here's proof that everything comes in from, in this case, nothing's part of the application because we're not within a Laravel application. But if we had gone and thrown this in a Laravel application, inside of here you would see, you know, app key and DB connection and all that stuff. So again, I don't know. Let's dig around for a few more minutes. This might not be the most productive stream today, but I'd really like to see this be possible because it's kind of, you know, it's one of those things that, like, again, you're not aware of, but it can be really, really bad to pass all of this stuff down. So it'd be really nice if we could prevent that. Now, again, the easiest thing to do would just, if you said without env, we just don't pass any env variables down. So we could simply just do this and, you know, do get env and then set everything to false. You could do that. I mean, technically you're saying without envs. So the simplest version would probably be to just use get env. But I think a better version would be to read the env that's coming from your application and not pass those down. So it's kind of more like without application envs or something like that. We can come up with a name later. I need to see if it's possible first. So it's definitely possible to read all the envs. We're dumping those out now. But can we read them all from like a Laravel application? That's the part that, you know, I don't know. So, it'd be easier if we were within a Laravel application so we could kind of mess around in there. I'm a little curious where .env is being used inside of Laravel. So let's kind of backtrace that. So let's not do so. Okay, so load environment variables. Here we go. This is helpful. It bootstraps the application, not the most awesome. I don't want to have to like get an instance of the app inside of a facade. That's typically a no-no. We create .env, we load it. Let's go look at create.env. So it gives you a repository. It does the path, it does the file. Okay, that's fine. So it creates it. Okay, so it creates with env get repository, which we were looking at before, which doesn't have a listing of all of them. And then it calls safe load. So this just calls load, which parses them entries. Here we go, parses them and then puts them in the loader load, which is .env's loader, unfortunately. But it loops over the entries. It gets the value, gets the key. Okay, so yeah. Unfortunately, this is the only thing that seems to have access to the keys. Yeah. This is the only thing that has access to the keys. I don't think this one's going to be as smooth as I had hoped. There's no listing at the .env level of the available variables. They get loaded in, you know, in this class early on, and you know, in the framework. But again, they're not, the entries are not tracked. So if we did a DD here, you know, you would see the key value pairs, but you're never going to see them after that, unfortunately, because they're just going to get read out based on when Laravel loads your config files, because you're loading them by name. You're saying env and then here's the name. There's no massive registry anymore of what they are. They just get put into this repository. And unfortunately, there's no like list all. So yeah, if you wanted to list all, you'd kind of have to go to .env and then list the names. They may not like that because, you know, that maybe exposes what the env variables were. Yeah, that's kind of the only way to do it. And then at that point, you have to be in the processor side. You'd have to ask .env what those were, or you could ask env. So this would take multiple PRs to kind of get it to work the way I want, which is excluding Laravel's app envs. So yeah, not awesome. Huh. Again, it could work by saying get env. You know, it's kind of a global PHP function though, so that's going to be a bit hard to test. So, you know, again, you'd have to wrap it. I don't know, might back off this one. Not super awesome stream today. Sorry about that. But I like getting into these without really knowing. I don't want to do a bunch of prep work. Like anybody can watch someone like breeze through a well-prepared talk. I think sometimes it's good to just kind of dive in and see where we get. So where I'm leaving this one is you could do this down in our pending process. So pending process, and then our little without env. You could make this work technically because you're just doing what we're doing here. You're reading here and then you're looping over and saying false. So I could PR this. There's no tests for pending process currently, so whatever, who cares about using the global function there. But it's a little more heavy-handed than I want, right? There might be a reason to pass down, again, some of these system level things, right? Like, for example, like PWD, like you might want that coming through, or the system lang, like you might want that coming through. So that might be too extreme the other way. Again, I'm trying to prevent this from passing down your application environment variables because those are the ones that are sensitive, such as app key and you know, your database connection. And again, I could make a registry here. You could just have like, you know, Laravel envs or something, and you know, start to say like app key and blah 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 blah. But you know, that's a lot to maintain. That's just yet another thing they have to maintain between versions. I don't think that's a very smooth implementation. And again, it wouldn't get your custom env variables, which again probably contain sensitive information, Stripe tokens, right? May not want those to be passed around to other processes that you run. So what would be best is to be able to pull from .env and know, and I don't think without a PR to .env that's possible. So for now, just a PSA, make sure that you disable the Laravel envs or critical envs in your application by setting them to false and calling the current env method yourself with things like this set to false. So if nothing else, hopefully you learned that. Thanks for taking the journey with me. Tomorrow we'll work on something new that I have thought of. I do think it's possible. So we'll get back into the code tomorrow. Today was a little exploration, and unfortunately we struck out on both those. I don't think PRs, I don't feel good about the implementation or the breaking change that would occur in the case of the global event names. So these are going to stay untouched, unfixed. They just are the way they are. So enjoy. See you tomorrow.